What's up, guys? Checking in from Brookfield Health Sciences just outside now ahead of my Paediatrics OSCE for final med. Okay, so you know that you work up to this moment over those 4 years where you're starting your final med exams, and the first one is a in-person practical exam, you know, tested by examiners, by consultant pediatricians. So it's very intimidating, it's challenging, and I will let you guys know how it went once I'm done. But naturally enough, like any exam, whether you're doing your junior cert, your leaving cert, any other exam, feeling nervous, feeling, you know, sweaty, sick in my stomach, stressed, feeling like I know nothing. But this is always the case before exams. And my approach from here is to try to be calm when I go in, to speak slowly, to not just let your thoughts fall out without you vetting them first. And that always improves performance, because there's a tendency in an exam like this to want to speak and to keep speaking and to keep speaking. And I find that over the years, if I can be comfortable with being silent for a moment, gather my thoughts, create a framework for how I'm going to discuss the information that the examiner has asked me about, then it just leads to much better outcomes. So I might be saying different things once I come out, but an example of where this might come up would be, you know, right, a child is having an asthma attack or they're seizing. What are you going to do next? So rather than rushing in and jumping to, you know, the advanced treatment or the treatment that's ultimately going to be required, I try to think in my head, okay, let's start with all the basics. And this is what we're taught, you know, to do an A, B, C, D approach for your primary assessment. So check the airway, check the breathing, check the circulation, check the glucose. Are there any neurological signs? Are there any rashes? So starting with that very basic approach of just assessing, gathering information, and then proceeding with, you know, the basic treatments, you know, things like fluids, oxygen, all these types of things that aren't necessarily the advanced medications that you might need to get to, but just starting by collecting some of those marks, being calm, being systematic, being reasonable. And then it means that if it does get to the more advanced management and I'm, you know, slipping up on, I don't know, types of drugs or doses or when to give them, how long to give them, at least I've gathered those first few marks. So it's sort of like, you know, in junior cert or leaving cert, when you're doing maths questions, that when you're asked the question, that you're able to, you know, show your work, to be systematic and to be clear about how you got to a given endpoint, so that even if the answer at the end is wrong, you were still systematic. And in medicine, it's all about being safe. So were you safe in your approach rather than just getting to the end and getting the treatment right? So that's what I try to remind myself, because that can also help with the self-criticism associated with a lack of knowledge. So for example, if I'm asked a question about, I don't know, some advanced renal condition, and I don't know the eventual treatment that the renal physician, nephrologist is actually going to administer, at least I can start with the basics by saying, okay, I'm going to do these blood tests, I'm going to do these investigations, I'm going to establish the patient's fluid status and prescribe fluids accordingly. I'm going to check the rest of their vitals. I'm going to see, are they comfortable? I'm going to see what I can do to make them comfortable. So basic supportive care. And then I've got those marks. I've shown my work. And then if I get to the end and I'm like, I actually don't know what monoclonal antibody is supposed to be prescribed, at least I gather those marks along the way. So there are some of the things that help me to be calm and are transferable to all sorts of exams. So anyway, I'm going to do some final revision here in the car, and I'll check in after once I'm done and let you know how it went. And that's that, all done. Feel more stressed and less composed than when I last spoke to you just before. But yeah, that's done now. Exam is finished. It actually went pretty well. I'm pretty happy overall. You know, could have been better, but I mean, you're always going to say that. Could have been worse too. You know, I'm confident that, you know, I didn't fail that exam. That's the most important thing. We got over the line, I think. So we had 4 different stations for that OSCE. So we had a case of eczema, different images, how would you manage it, how would you describe the rash, complications, all this sort of stuff, talking to mom, how would you explain it. You know, then we had an emergency case of managing meningococcal disease. So again, trying to be systematic. It got a little bit flustered, I think, in some stations, but got there in the end, you know, confident I knew more or less what to do. Then we were shown some x-rays. There was bronchiolitis, there was a venous blood gas to analyze, there was some questions about the management of bronchiolitis. And what was the other case? Oh yeah, the history taking case on jaundice in a 4-week-old baby, differential diagnosis, management, etc. So yeah, overall not so bad. Happy to be done, and time to fill the car with petrol and fill myself with some grub and enjoy the rest of this Saturday. Examiner Saturday, really.